know what you're doing to get programs together.
Well, you can get out the live stream on rabbitholecentral.tv, and then I'll post it to YouTube, because I'm really excited, Harold, to talk to you about binary economics, because yesterday my mother and I spent a long time watching Kelso. We would pause, we'd go get something to eat, we'd discuss it, and she knew about ESOP, which is employee
stock ownership plan.
Stock ownership plan, yeah. And I was wondering if you could tell me a little more, because what excites me is in this time, in this day and age of the 9/11 truth reinvestigation and all that, there's so much blame and animosity from different sides. And I'm even looking over the Armenian genocide, which the Holocaust there. And it was such a bright point when Kelso started to speak, very much like lawyers that I had heard when I had my cellular money, but only plotting about how to save taxes. This guy was using that same kind of level-headed business sense, except in this case, his clients, you felt like, were the entire citizenry.
Well, yes, I'm just trying to make, I'll be happy to talk about that anytime and everything, but I'm just wondering, are you hearing me on whatever it is you're recording, okay, over this telephone, or
yes.
you're not hearing it over the internet?
I'm not, because I have no internet connection. It's wireless, and every once in a while, this lightning fast speed, wonderful connection just dies. And I had heard from, my brother set it up here, that in the Berkeley Hills, Comcast is not giving any attention to fixing it. So, most of the people just reside here.
If I may, what are you recording? What
I have a little camera. I have a little camera.
A camera on you? Then.
On me, yeah. All they're seeing is...
see.
Yeah, they're just seeing me, but they hear you also.
And they hear me. Okay, fine. Well, then that's that. Because I've got it going here, and I see myself. I'm at the site and streaming, so... Okay, so yeah, absolutely. Louis Kelso wrote, he was somebody that I was very friendly with. We got about 15, 17 programs with him we've done over the long haul, including some way back in the 70s and so forth. And he had a view of economics, and he was an interesting person who doesn't fit very well into most people's way of thinking in terms of what you might call the canon of economic theorizing.
Right.
But he was somebody I think maybe from a certain perspective has an approach or an understanding of things that's more in keeping with what the future requires than almost all of our political economy, they used to call it in the old days, linking politics and economics, than anyone who is before us in the media and so forth, or our political leaders and that kind of thing. And they published a book. It's got a very controversial title. He and Mortimer Adler. So this goes way back, really. And Mortimer Adler was chairman of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Some people think leading, if not the leading American philosopher and so forth at Chicago, and the great book series and all that sort of thing, lent his name to it. But they came out with a book in 1958. So that goes way back to the 50s. And it had the title, I don't know if it was intentionally provocative or not, because so much of what you would call the progressive or left community has been enthralled with the writing the Communist Manifesto of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels and so forth. And he came out with a title that has been roundly ripped off in the meanwhile since, but his really has meaning. It was called the Capitalist Manifesto, and he was setting forth his philosophy, and Mortimer Adler lent his name and prestige to that, but it was essentially Lewis's idea, and as early as 1958.
Wow.
So he was looking at a situation in a longer-term perspective than we tend to look at things now, and he had an entirely different context of understanding things, essentially saying that the way things are being produced in the in goods and services, including services even, is increasingly having to do with technology and with things other than human labor, and he brought into question our acceptance as of the labor theory of value that had informed, or can be seen to have informed, virtually all of economic theory since Adam Smith. And that would mean if his analysis is correct, it really doesn't matter if you're a Marxian or a leftist or you're a Friedmanite capitalist. It's all being informed by the same notions of production and the human condition. And he took exception to that and said we have to have people be related to the way things are actually increasingly being produced and the trends therein, where the things, aspects other than labor, all aspects other than labor, are increasingly responsible for actual production. And that's what he was saying. We have to expand ownership of the means of production that do not involve human labor, and that calls into question all of the organizing principles of the world, really, Western civilization and so forth, because it's all formulated within that notion that people will get return, or demand will be built within the larger society by people's labor relationship to the economy. That is, for the masses of the people having a job within a structure and saying it's their labor which makes the technology so more, the productivity analysis, that it's through labor, and the basic policy grounding statement for the United States as a mentor economy to the world is the Employment Act of 1946 that states we will distribute to the masses. If we're not going to do it through need, as Mr. Marx said, or through government process, if we're not, or at least you could have aspects of that. And he always recognized the government has a major responsibility for setting the template, which is an important principle, but that we have to have an alternative way of distributing, not only forming capital or accumulating capital for us to invest in productive output, but we have to have a way of distributing income by something other than labor. And that's the thing that is the bone of contention now, it would seem. And he directly faced that. It was interesting, he'd written the book when he was in Panama in the Army. Officer had written the backbone of the book, and then he was just about to think about bringing it out, and then all the work came, and they passed the Employment Act of 1946, so he said, well, I better put it back in the closet for a while, because it's just not going to work, because this idea of distributing according to labor values, work ethic and all that was so ensconced that then they finally came out in 58, and then there were some books that proceeded after that. But he was the father of what is called binary economics.
One thing I liked was he said in 1932 the New Deal had one sound point, and he said whether it was conscious or unconscious that government is responsible for the prosperity of the economy. And I remember months and months ago when I used to dialogue with Webster Tarpley, he said strong government is important, and I think this is probably the area where he would be in agreement with Kelso, but I'm still baffled as to why he either is not informed about the limitations of only valuing wealth according to labor, or what the deal is. But Kelso said that after that one sound point that government is responsible for the prosperity of the economy, they went off in the wrong direction when they only distributed according to jobs.
Yeah, well, he would take that position, but it's such a big idea that, I mean, the idea that you're going to have some alternative way of distributing income is what's at the base of what sets him aside, in my view. And I nest him along with Buckminster Fuller, who had a reading of capability at a design level that we have you could take the principle that through the evolving technologies, what's transforming things so dramatically and so forth, and we have a capability of providing for people in a way that historically we've not had. And it's important to stress, you're not talking about the reality, the actual reality that people walk around in and take usually they'll come up and say it's all good, but I have to do something to pay the rent. And they've got that view of things.
But Harold, in that case, he would talk about moribund capital, saying that there's capital that is moribund because people can't use that much that have it. And so the people that are walking around who seem to be in lack are in lack because the capital is not being used efficiently.
Well, the capital might be used efficiently according to some criteria, and the people that have to make those decisions are, I mean, the financial people and the capitalists are very good at, you know, at effectively making investment, that sort of thing. That's part of it, but it's the overall system and the reality that's behind it. He had another book that he and his wife, Patricia Heder Kelso, wrote called Two-Factor Theory, the economics of reality. And the thing he was stressing is the reality has changed from what has been historically, and that it's the technology that's responsible. And so, you developed in the economic sphere two schools of thought. One was sort of like Keynes, and he looked at the Depression, and we had all this capability to provide for everybody, but you had people riding on the rails, freezing to death because they didn't have the price of the ticket that they could sat in the carriage.
And meanwhile,
they had a capability that was expanding, and it's that unutilized capability. We have a capability to provide for everybody. So you have on one side the supply side, that is.
But hang on, Harold. You didn't say that the carriage was empty.
No, the carriage was empty, yeah.
Right.
The carriage would be empty. They'd be riding on the rails because they didn't have the price of the ticket. That's the demand side.
Right.
And that's a metaphor for the world. We have a capability that the people of the world don't have the demand or the income or the ability to buy what it is we're capable of producing and have won through hard knowledge and expansion and all that sort of thing. They don't have the ability to clear the market.
Well, that's
so you have a capability. So you've got demand side and you got supply side, those two arguments and so forth. And Lewis always used to say we shouldn't be going either with Mundell or Friedman or the supply side of making it easier for the capitalists at the expense of the people or the expense of the demand for the people to buy what can be produced, or we shouldn't go all on the demand side, which was Keynes, where they were trying to get the thing going. We should have what they call simul-financing, where you build the capital formation capability and the demand capability among the people to have the income to buy what the market's able to produce. So it would be something called simul-financing, and that's what he was about trying to encourage as a basic policy grounding statement for the United States as a mentor economy to the world, and it still hasn't been picked up. We still hear the same old arguments based out of the enthrallment to the historical patterns we've inherited out of history that has where the reality has been transformed.
Say, Harold, what is one of your favorite interviews with him? Because if you have 19, what would you want someone to start?
I don't even know, to tell you the truth. I'm in such a quandary in a sense because I've done so many.
Right.
I think maybe the best one, and one I have to get a copy of, is way back in 1974.
Oh.
When, because we live in a real world. And Lewis's voice was always a voice in the wilderness. You know, he's talking about something that none of the economic theory and none of the political people would have been able to hear. And he used to say he was pounding the marble halls of Congress trying to get some attention and so forth. And he had arranged for him about 1973-74 a meeting with the man who was perhaps the second most powerful man in the federal government then. That was Russell Long. Who was the son of Huey Long from Louisiana, a populist. And they had a eureka meeting at the Montpellier Room at the Madison Hotel. Many in Washington will know that room. They had a eureka meeting where the roof lifted off, and Mr. Long, or Senator Long, saw the wisdom of what he was saying and said, that's exactly what we need. And he came storming into the Senate the day after that and said, I'm no longer a Keynesian. And
Wow.
President Nixon has said, we're all Keynesians now in 1972. I'm a Kelsonian. He came in with that, and they did manage to get about 12 pieces or more legislation that encouraged in various ways they were able to, but then you run into political resistance and all that sort of thing. legislation through. But we did arrange to do an interview right then at that moment with Russell Long.
Wow.
And Louis Kelso, and the then Secretary of the Treasury in Washington, and that was William Simon, the three of them, and that was arranged in the Senate recording chamber about 1974. And that's the program I would probably like to have more than any other. It would have the most effect. But I have misplaced, and I don't have the copy of that program, and it was on the 3/4-inch format that I had. I also had a 2-inch high beam. That would have been like a network standard thing because it was very highly placed people.
Right.
I can remember Nelson Rockefeller was bombarding, in his office, was bombarding Time Warner then when he had heard that that interview had been conducted. And just bombarding them to find out when that's going to air and how do we get copies and so forth.
Really?
So at the time, that was because it was very revolutionary and so forth. That such important people were really giving attention to what Louis had to say, and that's the one I would most like to have, and I don't have a copy of it. It's like I didn't have a copy for a long time of Buckminster Fuller. So I'm anxious. I'm hoping maybe the Senate maybe still has a record of that, or somebody out there in the world might have that copy, that program, because I don't have it. That's the one I would most like to have if I could.
Wow.
Because that involved the most powerful people in the government at the time, and they were discussing the issue, and Louis had a chance to be heard, and there was quite a bit of support. And there was a lot of William Proxmire, a lot of people in the business community could support it too.
And you conducted the interview?
Yeah, I went there to Washington and conducted the interview in the Senate recording chamber, which is a very high level place.
But Harold, how could you misplace such an important interview? Where do you think it is?
Because I don't want to go into the travails of the life that I've led.
Okay.
But it's always like that.
Okay. Okay.
Things have always been just so on the edge that you lose track, and then things like that. Like I don't have a deck that'll play those 3/4-inch tapes now. And now I got my camera just broke down, and I'm not sure I can get that thing going. I have to get that fixed today. When on the edge, really on the edge and everything, things aren't so efficient as they would seem to be, and particularly if you're not very well organized.
Well, we just have to keep the faith. I mean, you got a call from, what, Ontario, Canada yesterday?
No, well, it was, it was up last night. Young man called, 30-odd and so forth, tentative voice on the line, and I get a lot of calls from people saying, well, I got a deal for you, and so these robot calls, and I just hang up. But this was really a real person, young man, and he said, well, I was just watching a program, and he said, I was trying to wonder if I could get through to somebody in the staff or something, and I said, well, I'm Harold Channer. And so he said, oh, well, and then he was all flustered, and he said, okay.
I know.
A very good half-hour talk about, he's in Kitchener, near Toronto, and he had been watching the program that you did.
Right.
With, I guess maybe...
You and me.
I guess so. I don't know. There's been so many.
No,
We had a wonderful talk, and I encouraged him. He's doing a lot of... recycling of things that computers and things that clog up the landfills. And he's ecologically minded, and he was very familiar with Buckminster Fuller and everything. Wow. And so it was a very nice conversation with a real human being who's concerned.
Right.
And so I just wanted to let you know that, because there's somebody, he was watching it on the YouTube. So
wow.
We see if we had been back in the days of when I did that program with them in Washington, that would have been up on YouTube the next day.
Right.
It wasn't possible then, and everything was done. And you've got to be, if you're NBC or something, and they're not saying anything about it. They won't want to address it. And the progressive community won't address the idea because it stands against their commitment to the idea that everything will be done through the government,
Right.
But anyway, I don't mean to ramble on.
No, you're not rambling at all, Harold, because this is very interesting if we can put the word out through YouTube. One thing I realized was very precious about Manhattan Neighborhood Network, how they allow any producer to say anything that they want, They don't want bloody images like that and hateful things, but other than that, you can produce a show and it stays up there. Do you know lately that YouTube takes down people's sites just randomly? Not random. I mean, like, for example, as you know, I'm very enamored of the TV fakery that went on with 9/11. Well, one of the sites I most admired and I was gaining a lot from, because it was a good collector kind of site. It would mirror the best work, and you know what I mean? It was like one-stop shopping for me. He was called Ozzy bin Oswald too, because he had a site taken down before. Well, I found out yesterday or the day before that his entire site was taken down, and one of the viewers of mine who called it to my attention said that he had some friends in Google, and that he was going to see if he could contact someone in Google and see how we could make a connection with YouTube about who is determining this policy. Because when I was doing my cellular telephone license, we had to go before the State Utilities Commission. In other words, if you were going to offer a service to the people, you had to abide by certain guidelines to make sure that the public that you were serving was being well served. So I think it's very important that we find out why YouTube is taking down certain sites, you know, and to have some control, because if they have this unlimited bandwidth which allows them to store all these shows, and we're just simply trusting them to put our, you know, hard-earned, you know, our works of love and labor, then we need to have some kind of assurance that it will be treated properly. So
well, yes, I hadn't heard about them taking down websites. I don't know why they would do that, and I don't think that that's a winning strategy if they're doing that. I know they do that in China. We just went to the thing with the people about China, that big show they put on and everything, and they just censor everything that it goes into China. The whole country of China is totally censored, and the Google and the Yahoos and everything cooperate with it because it's such a big market they want to tap. But it's totally politically censored.
But I hate to say it, Harold, it happens here. There's another guy here in the Bay Area who's done something called 1/3 of the Holocaust.com. And I looked at his videos and liked them very much, and he says as soon as he tries to get them on YouTube, they're off. Now, whenever I do provocative material like reconsidering the Holocaust, I always try to stay connected with, you know, people, you know, like Gloria Messer and, you know, some of my pro-Zionist friends to kind of stay balanced. You know what I'm saying? And I think that although they may not agree with some of the things put out, I think all of us Manhattan Neighborhood Network producers realize the value of allowing anyone to speak their piece, no matter what it might be. Yeah,
that's true, and that's true. And then, there used to be an expression among the colonialists, or the benign neglect. One of the things is that the really powerful people, and most people don't think public access is any meaning at all. I mean, it's all Britney Spears.
Right.
It's what goes over the market dictates what the people want to see. And I just had a call from Ugly George the other day, and Ugly George is probably the one who helped get the Time Warner subscription rate up, or with Sterling Manhattan and everything.
Right.
When they first brought cable to New York City, because we were saying, as with that program with Mr. Simon and so forth, I did a program that Nelson Rockefeller was interested in and all that. But in terms of the people, and we say we can bring enlightening programming and intelligent notions and seminars on important intelligent things. And Ugly George, I don't think he's ugly, but he used to go around the streets of New York with a camera and entice women into a dark hallway and ask them to take off their clothes. and so he get hit upside the head 99% of the time, everywhere somebody would. And he gave the people what they wanted.
I know.
Was this pornographic stuff, or quasi-pornographic, and that caused the subscription rate to go soar, and that's what the people wanted to see.
I know.
So the establishment takes a picture of that, the taste of the people, the masses, that's the way the kings saw the serfs, I think,
Right. No, I had a wonderful talk with Ugly George in Gramercy Park, and, he's a little bit bitter right now But, you know, he was talking about the New York liberals are such hypocrites. Everybody would pretend that they wouldn't watch his show, but they loved his show.
Yeah, but they would. You know, that's what they wanted. And all that kind of stuff.
They signed up for cable because of it.
Yeah, that's why the subscription rates went up for cable. All the cable big hotshot suits and everything, oh, George, a great debt of gratitude, and the others who put up the kind of prurient stuff that everybody wanted to see secretly or something, but that's part of it. I don't mean to...
No, you're not rambling. You know what? We had a wonderful afternoon with Mark Rogers, who does my hair, you know, just because he wants to support the cause, and Steve Neskis. And Steve started to talk all about the old days of public access and about Ugly George. It was fascinating.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Well, yeah, I go back before there was public access. I was doing public access, but... Anyway, the only thing I mentioned is by the clock on my computer it's 12:27.
Right, so we should wrap it up.
We're almost coming up to the end of what would be the end of the program. So I just wanted to call your attention. So you got control over there what you're doing. Maybe you want to take count of that and say goodbye to people or something, or? Yeah,
I'm just going to put this up on YouTube because I think we are getting some attention for putting something hopeful on the table when we get people to kind of fess up to. I don't know what you'd say, crimes against humanity or just plain human greed, that we want to look beyond that and just create connections of empathy and I think what excites me...
But you don't want to make a break in something now? It's a half hour? You don't want to do that? You don't need to?
No, because I'm outside of Manhattan, Harold. It's not going to go on my Manhattan show. I want to get it up on...
This is not just a show then. I see, okay. And I don't know if anybody else is able to see. They're not seeing me at all, right?
I don't know what they're seeing, Harold, because I can't get online.
Yeah,
I do want to wrap it up because I know you have to get off to M&N.
212-695-6351 if you happen to be out there viewing. And you could call if you want. We're talking to Paula Gloria. She's in California during this Christmas Eve day, the day of Christmas Eve.
Yeah, if you want to stay on longer after I hang up and get anybody, that would be great. It's 212-695-6351, and you're going to get Harold Channer, the man himself. You know, not somebody in the staff.
Yeah.
And I just want to say in conclusion before I hang up, Harold, I am so grateful for the interviews you have gotten over the years because some of these brilliant minds have been locked out of peer review and we can just sort of keep the kettle boiling because now we've got these wonderful savvy viewers on YouTube and the internet who I think can carry the torch. So thank you for joining me. My name is Paula Gloria. This is an episode of Farther Down the Rabbit Hole that's going to go on YouTube December 24th, Christmas Eve. Thanks a lot, Harold.
What'll be going on will be the thing with from you there.
Yeah, I'll get it up right now.
Because it's not there. Now, do you want to hang up now?
I'll hang up and maybe you might have some viewers call you.
Well, I doubt it, but I might and everything.
Okay.
So let's be in touch. Have a happy Christmas. I'm going to go down to 6th and 1st today if I can't get it done uptown and everything. So it's good to talk to you. Give my best to Constantine, your mother, your brother, and everything.
I sure will.
And do me a favor, dear, and try and stay out of jail. Okay? Because that bail fund be running low, okay?
Okay. Take care.
Okay? Walk carefully, but carry that great big camera.
Okay, bye.
Okay, good talking to you, darling.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Wasn't that interesting? One thing I'll go over with Harold in the future is my mom felt that Kelso, now that he passed away in 1991, and we were watching him talk about in 1987, and you can see Harold mentioned this exciting interview they had in 1974 with Huey Long's son, and what a stir it caused in the Congress chambers, and how even Nelson Rockefeller wanted to find out when that show went up. So you can see what a pioneer Harold is, but my mom was concerned about, is this all passé now, because there's so much water under the bridge. But my feeling is the nature of the crisis is such, the financial crisis is such, that now Kelso can be appreciated for in his fullness, because the employee shareholder ownership program, the ESOP, where you could have shares in the company, was just a small percentage of his economic genius. So again, this is Paula Gloria, over and out.